On March 14, 1987, Margaret Hollis died alone in her Connecticut apartment. The official cause of death was listed as a heart attack. She was 32 years old, with no history of cardiac problems. When paramedics arrived, they found her body in the bedroom, her face frozen in an expression of absolute terror. Her eyes were wide open, staring at something in the corner of the room. In that corner sat a porcelain doll wearing a blue Victorian dress. Its painted eyes seemed to follow the paramedics as they moved through the apartment. One of them would later tell investigators that the doll's head had changed position between when he first entered the room and when he left. But that was impossible. No one had touched it. What the paramedics didn't know was that Margaret was the fifth owner of that doll. And she wouldn't be the last to die. Tonight, I'm going to tell you about 5 cursed dolls that didn't just haunt their owners. They destroyed them. The doll that killed Margaret Hollis has a name, though no one knows who gave it that name or when. Collectors call it the Watcher. It was manufactured sometime in the 1890s in a small workshop in Bavaria, Germany. The workshop burned down in 1894, killing all 7 workers inside. The fire started at 3 in the morning, and investigators found the doors had been locked from the inside. Only 12 dolls were ever recovered from the ruins. The Watcher was one of them. What makes the Watcher unique isn't just its age or its craftsmanship. It's the eyes. They're made from hand-blown glass, but the technique used to create them has been lost to time. In certain light, the pupils appear to dilate. In darkness, they seem to reflect more light than they receive. Margaret purchased the Watcher at an estate sale in February of 1987. The previous owner, a woman named Dorothy Chen, had died 6 weeks earlier. Also from a sudden heart attack. Also alone in her bedroom. Also at the age of 32. Margaret's sister, Linda, told police that Margaret had become obsessed with the doll in her final weeks. She would talk about how its expression changed depending on the time of day. How it felt warm to the touch, even when the apartment was cold. How she could hear it breathing at night. Linda tried to convince Margaret to get rid of it. Margaret refused. She said the doll needed her. On the night Margaret died, neighbors reported hearing her screaming. But when they knocked on her door, the screaming stopped. By the time they called the police and someone broke down the door, it was too late. The Watcher was sold again 3 months later. The new owner lasted 11 days. In the winter of 1956, a family in Amarillo, Texas received a package with no return address. Inside was a cloth doll, roughly 18 inches tall, with yellow yarn hair and button eyes. Stitched into the back of its dress were the words, "Little Caroline." The package was addressed to their daughter, Rebecca, who was 7 years old at the time. Rebecca had never heard of anyone named Caroline. Her parents assumed it was a gift from a distant relative who had forgotten to include a card. They let Rebecca keep it. That was their first mistake. Rebecca began having nightmares within a week. She would wake up screaming about a girl in old-fashioned clothing standing at the foot of her bed, whispering things Rebecca couldn't quite understand. Her parents dismissed it as bad dreams. Children have active imaginations. But then the sleepwalking started. Rebecca's mother would find her in the middle of the night, standing in the hallway, holding little Caroline, speaking in a voice that wasn't her own. The words were always the same: "Caroline wants to play. Caroline is cold. Caroline needs someone warm." When Rebecca's parents took the doll away, the incidents intensified. Doors would slam shut on their own. The temperature in Rebecca's room would drop so low they could see their breath, even in the Texas heat. Scratches appeared on the walls, 3 parallel lines, always in sets of 3. And little Caroline would reappear in Rebecca's bed no matter where they hid it. They burned it in the backyard on a Sunday afternoon. The doll wouldn't catch fire. The flames wouldn't touch it. Finally, Rebecca's father drove 40 miles out of town and threw the doll into a ravine. They moved to a different house the next month, didn't tell anyone where they were going. For 3 weeks, everything was quiet. Then Rebecca came home from school and found little Caroline sitting on her bed. This time, there was something new. The doll's mouth, which had always been a simple stitched smile, was now stitched closed. And there was dirt under its fingernails. Dirt that matched the soil from the ravine where it had been thrown. Antique dealer Michael Torres made his living buying estate collections and reselling them to collectors. In August of 2003, he acquired the contents of a mansion in Savannah, Georgia. The previous owner, a woman in her 80s, had died with no living relatives. Among the hundreds of items was a wedding doll, approximately 2 feet tall, dressed in an elaborate lace gown that had yellowed with age. The veil covered most of its face. Michael listed it online for $300. It sold within an hour. The buyer returned it 2 days later, refusing to explain why, demanding a full refund. Michael resold it. It came back again. And again. By the 5th return, Michael decided to keep the doll in his office and investigate why no one wanted it. He set up a camera to record the office overnight. What he captured made him seriously consider closing his business. The footage shows the office empty and still until 3:17 a.m. Then, slowly, the doll's head begins to turn. Not the jerky movement of something being manipulated by strings or hidden mechanisms. A smooth, deliberate rotation, as if it were looking around the room. At 3:23 a.m., the doll's right hand lifts from its lap and reaches toward the camera. The movement is so human, so intentional, that it's difficult to watch. At 3:31 a.m., the doll stands up. It walks 4 steps forward, the tiny shoes making no sound on the hardwood floor. Then the footage cuts to static. When it resumes at 3:40 a.m., the doll is back in its original position. But now the veil has been lifted. The face underneath is cracked, with one eye missing. And there's something written on the wall behind the shelf. 2 words, in what appears to be ash: find him. Michael hired a paranormal investigator, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who specialized in haunted objects. She spent one night alone with the doll. She emerged the next morning pale and shaking, refusing to discuss what had happened. She would only say 3 things: the doll wasn't haunted by the bride. The bride was still looking for the groom. And the groom was still alive. Some cursed dolls come with a history. Others come with instructions. Harold is both. He's a ventriloquist dummy from the 1930s, created by a craftsman in Chicago named Bernard Whitmore. Bernard was known for making extremely lifelike dummies, and Harold was considered his masterpiece. The dummy's jaw moved smoothly, the eyes tracked movement, and the facial expressions could be manipulated with surprising subtlety. Bernard performed with Harold for 3 years before he stopped abruptly. He locked Harold in a trunk, wrapped it in chains, and stored it in his basement. He never explained why. When Bernard died in 1941, his son found the trunk. Inside, along with Harold, was a letter. The letter contained specific instructions: never look at Harold after midnight. Never speak to Harold when you're alone. Never, under any circumstances, put your hand inside Harold's back to operate him. And if Harold ever speaks on his own, burn the building down and leave the city. Bernard's son thought his father had gone senile. He sold Harold to a collector. The collector lasted 3 months before Harold disappeared from his locked display case. The dummy was found 2 weeks later in an elementary school in Detroit, sitting in a child's desk in an empty classroom. No one knew how it got there. The school was locked. No alarms had been triggered. But what disturbed investigators most was the writing on the chalkboard. Sentences, dozens of them, all in perfect cursive handwriting. I want to play. I want to talk. I want to move by myself. Over the next 70 years, Harold passed through the hands of 17 different owners. 9 of them reported the same phenomena. They would wake up to find Harold in a different position. They would hear his wooden jaw clicking in empty rooms. They would find child-sized fingerprints on windows and mirrors, even though Harold's hands never moved. 3 owners broke the final rule. They put their hand inside Harold's back. All 3 reported the same sensation: something inside the dummy grabbing back. Something warm and strong. Something alive. Harold currently resides in a private collection in New England. The owner keeps him in a locked room in the basement. He checks on Harold once a week, never at night, never alone. Last month, he installed a camera in the room. Every morning, he reviews the footage. And every morning, for the past 16 days, the footage shows the same thing. At exactly 3 a.m., Harold's head turns toward the camera. His wooden mouth slowly opens. And even though there's no audio, you can see his jaw moving, forming words, over and over again. The owner hired a lip reader. The words Harold is saying are, "Let me out, let me out, let me out." Everyone knows about Annabelle, the Raggedy Ann doll locked in the Warrens Occult Museum in Connecticut. But what most people don't know is that Annabelle had a sister. Not a literal sibling, but another Raggedy Ann doll that was purchased from the same store on the same day in 1970. Both dolls were given as gifts to nursing students. Annabelle went to Donna. The other went to a woman named Patricia Reeves. While Annabelle became famous, Patricia's doll disappeared from public record. Until now. I've spent 2 years investigating what happened to the second doll, and what I've discovered suggests that Annabelle wasn't the dangerous one. She was the decoy. Patricia kept a journal during the months she owned the doll. Her entries start normal, the doll moves around the apartment, appears in different rooms, small items go missing. Standard haunted doll phenomena. But then the entries change. Patricia writes about dreams where the doll speaks to her, telling her things about her neighbors, her family, her childhood that no one else could know. Private things. Shameful things. The doll began leaving notes, written in a child's handwriting: "Miss me. Help me. Come find me." In her final entry, dated December 18, 1970, Patricia writes, "It showed me what it really is. It's not a child. It was never a child. It's something old, something that's been waiting. Annabelle is the mask it wears for visitors. But when we're alone, it takes off the mask. I saw its real face tonight. I can't stop shaking. I'm going to drive it somewhere far away and leave it there. If I don't come back, tell my mother I love her. Tell her not to look for me." Patricia's car was found 3 days later on a rural road in upstate New York, 40 miles from her apartment. The doors were open. The keys were in the ignition. There was no sign of Patricia. And the doll was gone. The case went cold. But here's what keeps me awake at night: over the past 50 years, there have been 17 missing persons cases in the northeastern United States. All women in their 20s. All last seen driving alone at night. And in 12 of those cases, witnesses reported seeing a Raggedy Ann doll in the back seat of the abandoned vehicle. A doll that was never recovered. A doll that, according to one state trooper, seemed to be smiling wider than Raggedy Ann dolls are supposed to smile. Patricia Reeves was never found. But last month, I received an email from an antique dealer in Vermont. She'd acquired an estate collection that included a Raggedy Ann doll. She wanted to know if I was interested. I asked her to send a photo. When I opened the attachment, my hands went cold. It was the right age, the right style. But what made me certain was the tag still attached to the dress. Handwritten in faded ink, property of Patricia Reeves. I bought it immediately. It arrived yesterday. I haven't opened the box yet. The box is sitting in my office right now. I can hear something shifting inside when I walk past it, even though I haven't touched it. Even though it should be completely still. Part of me knows I should burn it. Throw it in a river. Bury it somewhere no one will ever find it. But I need to know what's inside. I need to see if it's really her doll. And I need to understand what it wants. Tomorrow night, I'm going to open the box. I'm going to set up cameras, record everything that happens. And if you don't hear from me again, if this channel goes silent, you'll know that some cursed dolls don't just destroy their owners. Some of them collect them. And some collections are never complete.